Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Wanted to touch base on a topic that I hit briefly during, well, not briefly, but I hit during the last live stream. And I just wanted to go into a little bit more detail. And that's with how I got to where I am today. And part of the issue is, or part of the thing that I'm concerned about that gets lost is getting that story from getting from point A to point B. For me to go from having, feeling like I was completely devastated to being able to get my life back. And I know I've talked about this in other videos, but I know they get buried and they're hard to find and not as many people watch the old ones. So what I want to just say is, back in the day, right after my divorce, or right in the middle of it, I felt like I was completely devastated. I felt like I was going to be a slave to my ex for the rest of my life, that there was no recovery from this, that my whole life was destroyed, my future was destroyed, and that really weighed on me. Now, in a lot of ways, well, not a lot of ways, pretty much every way, all of those things are still basically true, but I've been able to find a way to get my life back and find some joy and be able to move forward. And one of the big problems with this is we get so caught up in what we thought the future was supposed to be, what we thought, or how we thought things were supposed to go, and being able to let go of that to basically re-baseline our lives and to basically start over again and to be okay with that is really, really tough. Now, I remember a conversation I even had with my dad before the divorce was even final. I remember driving back, back over the hill, called him on the phone and we were talking. And he had said to me, and I told him, I said, well, these are what the numbers are. This is what it is. And he's like, well, yeah, you're going to lose everything and it's going to get worse before it gets better. And when he said that, I didn't understand what he meant. All I got focused on was the fact that this was going to be what was happening at the time, which it didn't stay that way. It got a little bit better. But, those initial numbers were catastrophic. And I'm like, oh my God, it's going to be like this for the next 12 years. And I'm older. So I'm like, okay, so when I turn 52, this will all be over minus alimony. And then I can start digging myself out of this hole. Then I can start trying to save for retirement. And it was like, keep in mind that I had a plan. I had a plan to have a bunch of money in my retirement deferred account that I was going to be able to punch out at 56. And I had a plan on everything. I didn't expect to get divorced. I figured, I had my future laid out. And when this whole thing blew apart at the seams, it was all erased. Now, the first part, I made my peace with part of the retirement stuff because I'm like, well, okay, all right, rainy day fund. So I got to liquidate all of this to pay for the divorce and get out of debt and everything. I mean, whenever we started this whole thing, we were debt free. That obviously didn't last, but whenever it turned around that I was paying her like 63% of my take-home income, and once I started figuring the numbers out and once I started adjusting for taxes being basically, not having any dependents, it pretty much brought me down to like $900 every 2 weeks, a $900 house. I mean, it was just, there was no way. I mean, it was a completely devastating idea. And I'm like, oh my God, my life is over. There's no recovery. There's no way to get over this. Everything I've done is ruined. Everything is destroyed. And it was a devastating thing to confront. And I'm sure a lot of you are dealing with that right now. And probably as I'm talking about this could be really close to home for a lot of you. And you're looking at it going, holy crap, that's my story. When I was looking at that and I was thinking, okay, it's going to take me 6 years for the first kid to fall off for just to get a little bit of extra money. And I was like, I was living paycheck to paycheck. I was not able to do anything. I couldn't get credit. I couldn't do anything. I remember at one point, my tires were going flat on my truck. It was the only vehicle I had to get back and forth to work, really, that I could afford to drive. I did have a Bronco at the time, but the gas was so expensive on it, I couldn't even drive that. And I was just devastated. I'm like, oh my God, I can't even buy 2 tires to get this thing moving. And I tried to get an America Tire credit card, and they're like, nope, we ain't giving you credit because you ain't got none, right? And it was just one of the worst experiences in my life, and I felt completely destroyed. And the crazy part is I started to feel better. I started to get to the point where I can enjoy life again, and I was feeling like I had a future when it was still bad. Now, granted, after a period of time, I did get I was able to get some credit. I was able to do some things, and it's given me, unfortunately, at some points when disasters happen, you live on credit. So I have a boatload of debt. It's just depressing how bad that number is, but I was able to survive. I was able to figure it out. I had to swallow my pride. I mean, at one point, I even borrowed money from Debbie to buy tires, and that was the worst thing. I freaking hated that. I paid that back as soon as I could. But I mean, it was one of those things where I'm just like, oh my God, I've worked my entire life and I've lost everything. I've lost, I'm making significantly less take-home wise. I was getting harpooned at work all the time. I mean, things were really, really bad. And the key on this is after a while, I couldn't stay in that mode. I just couldn't stay fixated on how bad my life was, on how my ex had destroyed my future, my life, how work was just horrible, how my boss was a complete butthead, all those different things. They were all true, but I fundamentally got to the point where I'm like, if I do not change, if I don't change the way I'm viewing this, I am going to be trapped in this and I am never going to get out. It was really tough. It was really, really tough. And it was a slow, painful process to get to the point where I started to feel like I had some joy. And what I'll tell you is when that happened, when I started to feel a little bit better, my ex was right there to try to knock me off the ladder or whatever you want to call it, to shove me back down on the ground and say, oh no, you don't get to feel good. You don't get to have a good life. I'm going to frickin' take my finger and go boop right in your eye every chance I get. And she did. But I wanted to be free from this. And I wanted to not feel the same way I was feeling. And gradually over time, I started to pivot where I started to find my joy, my happiness in my everyday life. There was a period of time where I was so frustrated about living in this house, being so far away from everybody. I'm basically an hour out of town. There's not a lot of stuff in this city. There's not anything to really do. There's not even a coffee shop to go to. There's nothing, right? And I felt trapped. I felt like, oh my God, I can't even afford to drive to town to go do things. I can't afford to go see people. And bottom line is I was being really negative about things because there was ways I could do it. I had friends that would come out here and we go do things. I'd go meet my buddy Mike. I'd go meet my buddy Chris, meet my buddy Mike and meet my buddy Chris. And we would do things. And the problem is I wanted it the way I wanted it. I wanted it the way I visioned it. I didn't want it to be different. I wanted it to be the way I expected it. I wanted to be able to go out and take people to lunch or to get them coffee or to be able to afford to go down to LA and just drive around and hang out and take pictures and stuff. And I wouldn't allow myself to look at things in a different way initially. But right around the time before I even met Debbie, so Debbie and I just been dating for, oh God, I get the times wrong. I think it's 5 years. And there was a period of time before I met her where I was feeling great. I had made my peace with what was going on. I'd made my peace with my new baseline. I was doing better with the kids. Things were really starting to calm down. Now, it got worse as soon as she found out about Debbie, and I'll get into that in a minute. But even with all of that, I had found a way to be okay with what was going on. Now, what I was talking about earlier is anytime your ex thinks like, well, wait a minute, you're not thinking about me. You're not upset. You're not pining after me. You're not trying to chase me. Well, let me do something to basically make you remember me. And typically that involves either trying to alienate the kids, trying to mess with you within the court system or the child support services system, whatever the heck it is. They'll do whatever they can to try to make your life miserable. At that period of time, I didn't even really know what I was dealing with. So I was making a lot of mistakes and I wasn't understanding the motivation behind things. There were times where I'm like, oh, okay, so she's calmed down thinking about my ex. and that things will get better, right? Things are different. Things will, this stupidness would stop and then it would ramp back up. Now, when it did ramp back up that second time after I started, once I had a girlfriend, and that was really tough, right? I mean, because there was a lot of things that went wrong. And I think in some ways it was kind of like a test. It was just like the way of the world just kind of throwing something out there saying, okay, you thought you were better. Well, let's just make sure. Let's just make sure that you've actually gotten better. And there was a lot of stuff that was thrown at me. I had some IRS issues that came up that were really effing scary. I had child support services coming after me after the government shutdown that happened in 4 or 5 years ago. It was really tough. I mean, it was like every time I got up and tried to say, nope, I'm okay, it's like I would get pushed down and then kicked, dirt's thrown in my face, and then I get kicked in the side. It was really tough. I mean, and it was almost re-broke me. And then I had to basically build myself back up and dig myself out of that emotional hole again. The thing is I had to basically fight through that and find a way to find my happiness again. And I did. And I think you can too. And you guys owe it to yourself to try to find that. I was looking at a comment earlier that was really kind of sad where a person was saying, well, I can never be happy until I know that my kids, when they're adults, they don't repeat this cycle. And if that doesn't happen, then I can't be happy. And I'm really saddened to hear that. I understand it. I understand because I remember being that way. I remember being, so angry at everything on this and thinking that if the kids fall down this path, that it would just destroy me. And the problem is you owe it to yourself to find some happiness. You owe it to yourself to find a path out of this, not leave an if-then time bomb that if things don't go exactly the way you hope they would go, that you're done. You can't ever have joy or happiness. That's not fair to you. Do the best job you can. I'm doing the best job I can with my kids. I think I've done everything I possibly can to try to give them the best chance of success through this. But at the end of the day, they're going to make their own decisions. I'm dealing with that with my son right now. I'm still trying to help him as much as I possibly can. And there's a lot of evidence that he's making similar mistakes that I've made. At the end of the day, I know that I have tried everything. I've done every technique. I've tried every angle. And I'm still trying. I'm still trying different things to try to help him. But I cannot allow that situation to destroy any chance I could have for happiness. And I hope that you don't fall into that trap too. You do the best you can. And at the end of the day, you owe it to yourself to be able to find a path through this, to be able to get your life back, to be able to find some joy, to be able to find some peace. So the thing I want you to remember on this or take away from this is it took me years. It took me years to fight through this to get to the point where I am now. This did not happen overnight. This was not an easy thing. This wasn't one of those things where someone said, hey, you just have to find your happy spot, and it worked. It didn't. It took me a long time. My main message on this is to tell you that there is a way to get there. What I want you to take away from this is that, okay, I don't know how I'm going to get there. Just like I was thinking way back when. It's like, I don't know how I'm ever going to have a future out of this. But I want you to be able to look at it and go, okay, well, this guy made it through it. This guy has a very similar experience and felt very similar to me, and he made it to the other side. And it's not that he had this great victory. It's not that he went to court and boom, he won and the ex was held accountable and things changed. It didn't. It's like once it was set, once I got the 50-50 and the big gigantic number I had to pay for her, I mean, I didn't even feel happy about that. Back then at the time, whenever I won, I didn't feel like I won. I felt like she still won. It was really bizarre because I look back at it now and it's like, holy crap, I won, and I wasn't going for, majority custody or full custody. I just wanted 50-50, but because of the thing being so painful and everything being so nasty and all the crap that happened with it, I didn't feel like I won. It felt freaking horrible. And the problem is I think she thought that I won, so she wanted to make my life a living hell. But even with that, I was able to make it from that point to this point to where I'm actually doing pretty good. Now, yeah, granted, some of the kids are dropping off. I mean, first kid dropped off a couple years ago. My middle daughter is a senior in high school. Basically she drops off in I think July or whatever, for when she graduates in June. So, hopefully I'm hoping I can hold out before the rent goes up to that. So that'll offset that. But even, I mean, it's like I was still able to find a way to start enjoying life again and feeling happy again in spite of all this. And I just wanted to throw that out there so that maybe you can see that too. So I'm going to wrap this up. If you like this channel, please consider subscribing. Hit the bell notification so that YouTube will tell you about future videos. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And I will chat with you on the next video. Take care.